Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. Shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today? Where we'll be, well actually we're not going to be vibing out, I forgot. I do have something to talk about. And if you can tell by the title, it's going to be about Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. And in case you're new to the channel, this is just me just randomly, like, it's like my daily Animal Crossing vlog. I just talk about things randomly. I'm not recreating anything in Animal Crossing or anything like that. And this is not like a proper review or anything. Like I'm just a person, you know, talking about things I like. So, you know, don't read into it too much. But if you are a recurring customer, I will warn you before I get into any spoilers or anything. Basically, long short of it, I thought it was amazing. Anyway, good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 8:15 p.m. on Monday, February 13th, 2023. Tomorrow being Valentine's Day. Ooh, forgot about that, to be honest. But yeah. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish is a movie which came out, and actually it was a movie I kind of had my eye on. I generally have my eye on like animated movies which come out, or like a passing glance, or at least watch a trailer, that sort of thing. And Puss in Boots, it was one which it didn't have trailers for it like ages ago. It was set in, sorry, but whatever. Is this the second movie? I don't even know. It's not. It's like a third movie or something. But anyway, well, there was like first trailers that came out for this ages ago, and it had like a bit of a normal style, I believe, and then didn't they redo it? I don't know if I just made it up in my head or whatever, but anyway, when I saw the redone style, or the current style of the actual movies in right now, I looked at it and I was like, I need to keep my eye on this. This is a really cool style. Like, not only this is a really cool style, this is a nice execution of a style, and this is a fantastic sort of like oh, Whisper, actually, it's early enough that we can actually do your thing. It's a very cool execution of a style, and it has a lot of energy and, you know, life to it. You know, very much into the Spider-Verse, very much in the style of like, right, okay, not the exact style, but the sort of mixing and blending of 3D and the 2D, like textures and stuff that goes on top of it. So I had my eye on it, despite the fact I never watch any of the Puss in Boots 1 movies, and I think Shrek and Shrek 2 are both good movies, but they're not like my favourite movies in the world. I wouldn't be like, yeah, I mean, I've watched them a couple of times, certainly, and don't get me wrong, they are good. They're just not like, you know, I don't think they make up into my top 10, but I also don't know what my top 10 of movies are, so I never really thought about it. But Puss in Boots 2, I was like, you know, this visually, at least, has me, you know, you've caught my interest. And yeah, I watched it yesterday, and it was fantastic. It is, I would summarize it in I mean, I'm not going to spoil like any of the plot elements yet, or that sort of thing, but I will sort of talk overarching about plot. So if you want to remain unspoiled, I suppose this is your time to check out now. But I will say it is fantastically animated. Its animation is amazing. Is what I'm going to say. It's probably the style of the show, the animation. But its plot is actually pretty good as well. You know, the character, most of the characters, I would say, are genuinely quite interesting, or, you know, unique enough. It's a film which does a really nice balance between both comedic aspects and serious aspects. And it feels like it has, even though it's got quite a lot of characters with quite a few stories, they intertwine reasonably well together, and each character gets probably enough time for development, and yeah, it's just a good old time. Alright, so now here's your spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the movie and you don't want to be spoiled, here's your spoiler warning. All spoiler gates are off from now on. So I don't even know genuinely where to start with it. I think probably the thing that surprised me most about this movie, well, one is the fact that it had such not worldwide appeal, but such a wide appeal. Well, I mean, maybe worldwide. I don't know if it's been released everywhere yet, but it has such a wide appeal because it's, you know, it was a movie that I was like, I kind of want to go see this myself, etc., etc. But then it was a movie where I was seeing other people being like, yeah, I didn't normally like this type of movie, but this movie was fantastic. Now, I don't want to do the thing where you like super hype up and overhype a movie, and then people watch it and it's like, oh, it wasn't like game changing or anything. Okay, it's not a groundbreaking movie, I don't think, but it's because I guess if anything, you could argue that Into the Spider-Verse is one that really sort of challenged the animation norms at the time, which is the sort of like I don't want to say realistic style, but the Disney Pixar style. You know the one I'm talking about. Which I'm not saying is bad execution-y, it's just it's getting a bit boring, and the whole point of animation is to be able to sort of like expand the scope of it, and because with animation you can kind of do whatever you want, you know, you're not beholden to the rules of reality anymore. So, you know, by challenging the norms, I suppose, by pushing the boundaries and that sort of thing, you can make much more visually interesting and engaging media properties, I think. And Into the Spider-Verse is really like the first sort of step in by like a big studio, I think. Like, I think off the top of my head, which did this sort of like comic book style or whatever. Then of course, right, Arcane was something which followed close behind, not really a movie, and then Puss in Boots is sort of like a continuation on that. Do I like it more than Into Spider-Verse? That's really hard to say for me at the moment. It's really, really difficult. I don't think I can give you an answer to that. Maybe I think I like Puss in Boots a little bit more, but that's probably because I don't have as much affinity towards superheroes. That's literally probably the only reason. But it's one which really pushes the animation. Like, there were so many times in the movie where I was like, whoa, that was a really cool, like, animation, like, transition, or, like, effect, or motif, etc. And, like, the opening is fantastically gorgeous on what I saw. You see, like, this amazing shot of, like, the star, of course, descending, like, through the night into the sky, and, like, landing, and then, like, spreading, like, this, its colour and flowers, in like, colourful flowers, like, everywhere, and it's an absolute light show. And I was just watching it being like, no, well, that's a flex right there from, like, the animation team to make something so, like, gorgeous. You know, like that scene in Frozen 2, like, when Elsa sings Into the Unknown, and all those crystals basically, like, form at the end. It's kind of like that, except for, like, little, like, glowing lights, and I was like, that is gorgeous. And the movie starts off really strong, animationally speaking, because it starts off with, like, Puss in Boots celebrating his, like, party thing. He's, like, having a fiesta, whatever, and he's got the song. The song's not that great, to be honest, but it's, you know, it's kind of a point because it's very sort of, like, self-flattering in his own image. But it's got like, not the actual fiesta. I mean, fiesta itself is quite cool, but the actual fights, so the fight scenes between Puss in Boots and the Royal Guard, I'm not really sure what they are, Puss in Boots and the Giant, are fantastic, with so much energy in it. And I love it whenever movies, especially, you know, treat the camera as a person, I suppose. Like, the camera has its own choreography and actions that it's taking as it accompanies, and there's basically sort of duet between, or a truet, there's nothing, between Puss in Boots, the enemy, and the camera itself, all dancing sort of like around each other, and really, like, fluid motions. There's a real sort of sense of purpose with each of those sort of, like, movements and directions to really get, like, the maximum impact out of things. And, by the way, this movie's use of colour is phenomenal. It is unabashedly using these bright, vibrant colours all over the place, and it looks great for it, is what I can say. But yeah, that's a thing which really struck me, because it goes back and forth actually between, like, this very fluid, like, modern day, like, animated style to the comic book style, you know, where they hold poses for frames while the rest of the world moves around them, which gives it, like, a sort of choppy, snappy comic book effect in these action scenes, which, you know, I think it's very cool, like, the mixing and melding of styles together for, like, with different purposes. Because, of course, you know, when you have, like, these more emotional moments when you need the fidelity of the smooth animations or whatever, that's when you bring out smooth animations. When you want things to be punchy, when you want to hold on those, like, action poses for longer, you get the snappy comic book animations, and then the things like the comic book framing with speed lines, etc., don't look out of place. You know, they add emphasis and impact to the scene, and it's really, really cool. Yeah, what other sort of, like, yeah, but use of colour, I think I said that was absolutely fantastic during the movie. What other animations we can kind of say? But its direction is really, really cool. Like, obviously, you know, standout character by far and away is Death. He is, or Grim Reaper, but no, whatever, Death itself, Death straight up, is fantastic. His introduction is haunting. His character is, like, it's a perfect mix of the fact that he's got, like, a sort of otherworldly quality about him, but very grounded at the same time, because he is imposing, he's scary, he's terrifying, he seems like a force of nature, but he just looks like a wolf in that in that universe, I suppose, with red eyes. You know, he has a very grounded voice. He doesn't have, like, an ethereal speaking haunting voice. He just looks like a person, and I guess that's kind of, like, meant to be the grounding. Like, death comes through, or death is just, like, a normal part of life and that sort of thing, but it's still a force to be reckoned with, I suppose. It still can be terrifying. And the movie just, like, it's beautiful the way they portray Death, especially with the focus of eyes, I suppose, in Death, because, you know, I had a point about this, but I can't remember what my point was about it. My point was about it anymore. So, something about Death and eyes, like, I had a really, like, big point I want to say about it, but, you know, Death has these glowing red eyes, which looks very menacing at the same time, but it's also, you know, I guess you can't escape the gaze of Death. That's basically the sort of, like, vibe it's going for, and it has a real focus in the eyes, like, oh, that's it. Because quite often, like, whenever Death, like, clinks his, like, sides together, or, like, a flash of lightning occurs, his eyes just, like, illuminate, like, a different color, like, flash in a completely different color, like, to reflect a sort of, like, life flashing before your eyes sort of moment, and to really draw yourself to it, because he's just monochrome otherwise, but his red eyes are piercing. And there's a fantastic moment which, and I see a detail if you haven't watched the movie, is, like, when Puss in Boots has his first confrontation with Death, and, like, I can't remember, it's like a scene where, like, Death parries Puss in Boots or something with a scythe, and you can see, like, Puss in Boots' reflection, scared reflection in scared eyes, I suppose, in reflection of his life. And then in the final confrontation where Puss in Boots challenges Death's again, but like, you know, with like a reversed outlook or something, you can see Death's reflection in his own sight, I suppose. Fantastic inversion. Puss in Boots, you know, Puss in Boots and I believe Kitty Softballs are, of course, both in the first movie, so their like designs are like quite set in stone. Perito is fine, I would say. He just looks like, you know, that scrappy sort of like companion dog, and I don't think there was anything I was like, whoa, that's like, I guess it's like, it's nice, not nice necessarily, because he has a very tragic backstory, but he kind of looks raggedy, I suppose, in that same sort of sense, but he has such a bright, chipper personality throughout all is pretty cool. Who else? Little Jack Horner is a fantastic villain. and it's a thing which I see people say a lot about this movie after reading reviews and that sort of thing, and it's something I absolutely agree with. He is just unabashedly a villain, because there's been a bit of a trend recently to make like redeemable villains, or like not true villains, or fake out villains, or, you know, things like that, or no true villain, which is fine, don't get me wrong, you know, the point of stories is to be able to have a whole variety of things, but the thing is often, of course, with Disney and Pixar and like that sort of thing, is they tend to go along with the same sort of trends, because once one thing does well, they do that over and over again, because now they know it's safe money, or whatever business standards, etc, etc, which doesn't mean there's not care put into some of these villains. But I think most people will certainly remember the sort of like, or Disney's plot twist villain, like in every single oh no, I shouldn't have done this. Try again. Okay, fine, we'll be like yo ho ho. Yeah, yo. Oh my god, yep. Why don't we just do yee? No, yeah, okay, fine. Yee. That's not what I wanted to type. I just wanted to type yee, but then yee come out. Yep. Oh, I should have done e-up. Oh well. What was I going to say? Yeah, the Little Jack Horner is just unabashedly, unapologetically evil to his core. He's not redeemable. He has basically no motivations. He doesn't have a traumatic past or anything, and it's something which obviously, you know, is made fun of in the movie. The movie makes fun of lots of tropes and also leans into certain tropes here and there, you know. I'm sure TV tropes probably covers it better than I ever could, to be perfectly honest, but like, it's sort of like lampshading the fact it was like, oh, you know, is this guy like redeemable? He's got like a little conscience now, and everything. He's like trying to find out the cause of all of his evilness, and he's just like, no, I'm being evil just for the fun of it. Not even for the fun of it, I'm just doing it because I want to. And in certain aspects, I think in other movies that would be seen as probably quite shallow for a villain. People like complex villains in a certain way, but people also do like flat 2D villains, you know, big bad evil people who are just evil for the sake of evil, because it gives you something to root against. And I think if it works in this movie, it's because you have other antagonistic forces playing around, you know, challenging the main characters and furthering the plot of the story. Like, you have Death, who is sort of like, he's sort of like a naturalistic like villain. Like, he's not villainous for the sake of being villainous. He just like has his own code, I suppose, which he upholds, which is just sort of like opposes currently what our main character's point of view is, and challenges the main character, Puss in Boots, to, you know, further his thinking, to, you know, grow as a person. Then you have Goldilocks, who is antagonistic, I suppose, by having an opposing goal, but for her own gain. You know, she's very redeemable in that sort of sense. You know, she learns like the errors of her way, and she learns and grows into a person sort of like separate to be. You know, she's sort of like a much more human villain in that aspect. And then you have Little Jack Horner, who is just evil for the sake of evil, just a malevolent force of evil for really no apparent reason, and that just like gives you something to root against. So, you know, you have a nice balance of villains. That's why, you know, it's okay for one of the villains to be more one directional on one things. You don't roll your eyes at the fact that Goldilocks is redeemable as a villain, because you have the other villains also furthering the plot in their own certain way. You don't roll your eyes, I suppose. Well, I mean, I didn't. You don't roll your eyes at Death, like sticking to his code and not challenging Puss at the end, after he sort of like learned the errors of his ways and learned to, you know, respect the life that he is worth living, which is the entire thing that Death was trying to get him to do in the first place. Once Puss in Boots has respected Death, and you know, when it happens, he gives up. You don't roll your eyes at that, because it makes sense. And, you know, he's not the only villain, so it's not like, oof, the entire plot is now gone or whatever, because now little Jack Horner steps in and now is the big bad and he's ready to try and further his own goals. It balances all perfectly well. And, in the final 5 minutes, or maybe, more than 5 minutes, I'm going to talk about the story, because the story is surprisingly quite an adult story. Like, the entire movie is quite, like, you don't really call it a kids movie, I would say it's more of like a family movie. Or all ages movie, where it's like, it can appeal to everyone, because it has, like, quite some adult-esque stories, I would say, in the first place, because the major story, I'm not sure plot line is really the right word, but the major thing that is worth discussing is the fact that the entire movie is about, like, Puss in Boots coming to death with his own mortality, and the fear of mortality, the fear of death and dying, and the finality and the end of it all, as it, appears to Puss in Boots, because now, instead of relying on his 9 lives where he could just have get out of jail free cards, he doesn't have any more. That's it. His next death is going to be final, and that is terrifying and kind of scary for a lot of people, myself included. Like, I take quite a positive, like, nihilistic view on life, I would say, but like, so sort of like, death is a natural part of existence, live it well, but it's still scary, the concept of dying, the concept of there is nothing more, right? And coming to grips with it is not an easy task, especially with someone like Puss in Boots, who is basically known for, like, laughing in the face of death, known for, like, overcoming it time and time again. So we've got a festival on February 20th, makes sense, overcoming it time and time again, and that, his gripping with it gives a whole, like, new look to the character, I suppose, because the character is known for being like a bravado, a bit of like a Casanova, however, the people compared to Zorro, I don't really know Zorro that well, so, unfortunately I can't say the legitimacy of that, but seeing him just like being reduced to, your every person, I suppose, you're seeing a much more human side, ironically, as he's a cat, to him, is, sobering and makes him that much more relatable. It also portrays, like, panic attacks and anxiety, like, so incredibly well, like the slow down of the time, like, and in times where Puss in Boots realizes this might be his last moment, and then, like, his hair all stands on end, he turns around slowly, he can't pay attention to anything else, he's single, like, one track mind, and, like, the breathing and his, like, heavy breathing and everything, in fact he can't calm down. And then having Peritos, the therapy dog, come along and just, like, calmly rest himself on his chest to calm him down. It's just like, oh, that's going to be relatable to a lot of people, to be perfectly honest, and it's fantastic that they've done such a good portrayal of it in the first place. But yeah, the fear of mortality is such like a, like, I mean, I'm not going to say you don't necessarily fear death as a child. I mean, some of you who are parents probably might, you'd be like, actually my kids are quite fearless in the face of death, or whatever, especially like babies and toddlers. But it's sort of like it is not something which I feel like children necessarily are too accustomed to. It's often like not the first thing you learn about, but a big life lesson when you're young is learning about death, I suppose, and the finality of it all. But being scared of it, I suppose, because it's coming for you, is something which is a bit more of an adult theme, I suppose, behind it. Not to say that kids can't understand it as well. Kids are a lot more clever than you might think, I think. It's just sort of like interesting to see such a, serious topic, I suppose, in effectively a kids movie in the first place. And it's also even better, despite the fact the movie is very comedic, it's lighthearted, it's fantasy, things like that. It's given, like, the respect it deserves. Like, all the scenes with death are taken straight and serious, essentially. Like, it's all like fun and games, it's joking, and then death comes in and everything is not solemn necessarily, but things are being taken seriously now. Things just got real, essentially, every single time. And that, like, haunting whistle every single time it happens is sort of just like an indicator to both the audience and the characters in the movie to be like, hey, this is where you got to take things seriously now. It's fantastic. And seeing Puss in Boots comes to grip with it and realise that no, death is inevitable, but he can still fight for his life, he can still fight to earn and love his life, and everything that comes with it, it's worth fighting for, it's worth living for, I suppose, in the first place. You can't just run forever with such, like, flippant disregard to it. He can really learn to appreciate it, and I'm like, that is such a nice, like, moral. Like it's not like the deepest moral, but well, it's reasonably deep, I would say. And I'm not going to be like it's surface level or anything, but it's played. The moral is played quite straight. You know, there's not too much more nuance to it. It's like appreciate the life you've got, I suppose, and and it's a good moral all the same. It is genuinely a good moral. Did we not go to Tortmere? Wait, have we not been to Halves Island, mate? I don't even know if we've been to Halves Island. That's okay. This episode can go a bit longer. I like to talk about this movie. This movie is good. And then what's also great is the fact that the movie has other subplots going along simultaneously alongside of it. Not all of them get, I would say, like the nuance that, of course, the main plot gets, but you know, they still get hints dropped here and there. Like obviously with Kitty Softpaws, you know. Even though I haven't seen the first movie, I think it's very, very apparent that they had like a relationship going on, and then like things went south of them, and now she's very much like an ex you know, lover of some kind. You can tell through her bitterness. You can tell through a very sort of like adult-esque. When I say adult-esque jokes, I don't mean like lewd jokes or anything like that, but like the things that like only adults really understand, I suppose, like that sort of dynamic between like a scorned lover, I suppose. But you can tell that she's really sort of hurt by that sort of betrayal, being like left alone, abandoned, etc. And it's fantastic to have the MacGuffin, in this case for being like the star map, basically one which reflects the deepest troubles and worries that you have as a person, and wants you to overcome them. Because when I keep wanting to call her Mittens, that's on Bolt, and when she picks up a map, you can see how everything changes from like a sense of bravado and Puss in Boots' fear of death. It changes all to things about sadness, to about loneliness, to about like abandonment and trust issues and that sort of thing. I can't remember the actual things, but it goes from like Puss in Boots had one about like the fear of death, except the valley of death or whatever, and then like Kitty Softpaws had one all about the fear of like loneliness and misery and sadness. And I was like, oh, when I saw that, I was like, very interesting. And then you know, it's, I'm not going to say it's explicitly spelled out to you exactly what's going on, but it is eventually like talked about, I suppose, in a way. But it's made clear, but it's not made like abundantly clear in a way that's like, you know, it's not got like neon like lights pointing to it being like, hey, she's sad because she got abandoned, or she's sad because she's lonely, etc, etc. She doesn't have anyone she can trust. You can tell by the way she acts. And then when, you know, obviously, you know, kids might not necessarily get that, or immediately they talk about it in a way that's sobering. But, you know, there's a very nice scene after Puss in Boots has a panic attack where she overhears them, where I think it's kind of like the most clear, and her own conflicted feelings on it. And then Goldilocks has a subplot about like finding family. You know, she's an orphan, but she's been adopted by these bears, but she always feels like an outsider in her family because she's not a bear. Obviously it's kind of played for laughs, I suppose, at the same time, but it's also, you know, got like a poignant reason behind it at the same time. And then like her motivation for getting a wish is she wants to find a real family, and it has a really heartbreaking scene where she finally tells them what the wish is, because you can tell from very early on she's conflicted about the wish. When she has these good moments with a bear family, she's like, wait a minute, what am I wishing? Like, why do I want a real family? Like, isn't this a real family? But then she still presses on anyway, but you can tell she's uncertain of herself, but you can tell she's just frustrated, I suppose, at it all. And then they have a heart-to-heart, I suppose, as a family, where, you know, of course her baby bear brother feels very betrayed, and her father is just sort of like solemnly like trying to stip up a lip, and her mother just says an absolutely heartbreaking thing, being like, it's okay, dearie, that, you know, whether you think of us as family or not, if this is the wish you want, then we'll help you get that wish. And it's just heart-wrenching to hear that, probably from both her perspective and from the audience perspective. Let's sit down here, you know, Phoebe, as we talk about this. And it's just fantastically well executed. I will say, and it's not, I shouldn't say it's like perfectly executed, because I feel like it doesn't really get all that much time expanding, probably because the fact that you have a lot of characters going at the same time, it's a little bit difficult to flesh everything out. But yeah, it's a very, you know, fair like story point, and it feels well motivated. It feels like it makes sense, and it feels like it concludes normally, because you can already tell that she knows, kind of knows in her heart, but doesn't know. She doesn't want to admit it necessarily, that her family that she wants is right in front of her, even though it's not necessarily the family she had in mind. And then when she comes to finally accept that, she's like, okay, there we go. She's no longer a villain, and she never really was a villain in the first place, I suppose, because she's not really antagonistic so much to like Puss in Boots. She doesn't like, she's only against Puss in Boots because her goals contradict with his goals, but now the goals don't contradict anymore. She's fine with helping him. Like, it's established very early on that she respects him by being like, hey, we should hire Puss in Boots. He's like the best thief or whatever in, you know, all of Far Far Away Land or whatever the place is called. So it feels like a natural progression. What else can I say? I'm just gushing about how great the movie is. I mean, you could probably see like thousands of reviews, thousands of like analyses out there of like how great the movie is or whatever. I will say, little asterisk, the thing which I thought was actually the worst part about the movie was actually there's this cat lady called like Mama Luna, right, who like looks after all these cats. I will say she's quite a forgettable part of the entire movie. She's kind of like just there because I understand why you need it in the plot. You need a place for Puss in Boots to basically effectively give up, like the other extreme of like, instead of his life of bravado and adventure, he has a life of safety and, you know, nothingness, I suppose. In the first place, you need that contradiction of each other, but unfortunately it's just a bit like meh. It's just a bit boring. It's a bit slow to get there, like, and get through it. You know, he's there to meet Perito, I suppose, but part of me intrinsically sort of goes like, is there a better way of like showing it? Like maybe yes, maybe no, maybe it just doesn't spend as much time there, but then probably doesn't have as much emotional impact, I suppose, to show how draining it is at the same time. I'm not sure how I would have done it. I'm not a professional, to be perfectly honest, but I will say it is probably the weakest part of the movie because it's kind of forgettable. It is a nice introduction to Goldilocks, I suppose, and Three Bears. But yeah. Wait, what else can I even say about this movie? It's just fantastic. I love the animation, and you know, even though I'm sure maybe like 10 years down the line, when every single major studio does this sort of animation style, I'm gonna be like, oh, I wish there's something new again. You know, bring me back those old like realistic sort of like animation days, maybe. But for now, I'm loving the direction that people are taking with this. You know, please give me more of this 2D painterly style mixed to 3D. You know, mix and match your animation styles. Push animation to its limit. That's what it's there for. And Puss in Boots is just a fantastic one, illustrating that, and it's just a great watch. It's one of the rare movies which I'm like, yes, I would watch this again. And not for like to try and understand the plot even better or anything like that. It's just an animated like spectacle and delight to watch, but also has a really nice plot going for it at the same time, which is just like a nice sort of like cherry on top bonus. So there you go, Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. I don't know what I'm going to call this video, probably The Last Wish, because I guess I don't really focus on Puss in Boots, but yeah, it's really a fantastic movie. I'd urge you, please go watch it if you have the opportunity to, even if you're like, I'm not really sure if this is my sort of movie. I mean, unless you really hate animation or that sort of thing, or like have a vendetta against Puss in Boots, like maybe you're Little Jack Horner himself, then okay, fair enough, you don't have to see the movie, but I would say it's worth a watch. It's pretty good. It's really good, I would say, and it probably makes my top 10 movies of all time, I would say. Because I mean, if Into the Spider-Verse does as well, then I feel like this movie kind of has to at the same time, because it does things so well. It's really good, is all I can say. But yeah, anyway, there's got my sort of review about Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. I don't know, go watch it. But on that note, I'm going to round this episode off here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares are greatly appreciated. Twitter, Discord down below. Hope we can see each other again, but for now, it's farewell. So until next time, bye-bye for now. Who is your favourite fearless hero? This is where I do the whistle, but I can't remember what the death whistle goes like, so, you know, oh well.